Welcome to Mishna study, Masechet Kilayim, Perek He Mishnah He. This Mishnah is one of the more fascinating Mishnayot in Masechet Kilayim. Harabam goes to great lengths to explain this. He doesn't go through the math this time, so I'll leave it to all you to figure out. Maybe I'll put in a little word or two here or there. But he does end the Perush at the very end, and he says how one of the great scholars who studied Talmud, was asked to explain this Mishnah, and after his response, after so much gimgum, right, of struggling, was he said, there's so many little details over here, and with God's help, I'll be able to explain it to you one day. So it was such a struggle. Harambam really clarifies so much over here, and we'll take you through it. I'll explain it very simply in the beginning, and then we'll go into it at a deeper level. So we're speaking about someone that decided to plant vegetables in his vineyard. So if you do so, you're over on Kilayim, and now everything becomes asur, right? Everything within the radius of that vegetable that you planted, right? You have the whole vineyard. How much becomes asur? So we're going to say anything within 16 amot of the vegetable that you planted, and it's going to be a radius of 16 amot. Right? That'll also be a circle of a diameter of 32 amot. That's what we're going to speak about. Now, it's going to depend on what type of vineyard you have planted, meaning how much space you have between each vine. If you have 4 amot in between each vine, it'll make more vines asur than if you had 5 amot or 6 amot or 7 amot between each vine. So that's what we're going to discuss over here. Let's go through the Mishnah. I'll explain it very simply, and then we'll go back and explain further. If someone plants a vegetable, right, or vegetables really, in his vineyard, or if a person even leaves it, it's planted over there. He knew it was there. He didn't plant it himself, but he said, I'm going to leave it, let it grow. Right, this mekadesh, it makes it asur b'hana'ah, 45 vines. Ematai, when so, when it's planted in rows that are 4 amot apart or 5 amot apart, each vine in each row, right? And if you picture like a squared off graph, right? They're 4 amot apart between point to point, or they're 5 amot apart point to point. But let's say hayan nutuot al shesh ve'al sheva sheva, harez mekadesh shesh esrei amal chol ruach. Right? If it's planted 6 amot apart or 7 amot apart, then it makes asur what? 16 amah in each direction in a radius. Agulot, right? It's it's agulot, meaning it's it's rounded, right? So we're going to look at it in a circle. But lo mirubaot, right? We don't square off corners. So how does this look? So if you look at this picture, where a person planted a vineyard 4 amot apart from each other, right, in each direction, and imagine that he planted a vegetable right in the middle, right in the center, right? So it's going to be mekadesh 45 gifanim, 45 vines, right? If you take actually 16 amot in each direction, right? So 16 amot from the center point, right? You're going to get 3 more to the side plus the one in the middle, another 3 more to the left, right? So it's 7 across, right? 7 vertical, 7 horizontal, that's 49, minus the 4 in each corner, that's red, that's outside the radius, right? If you draw a circumference around that 16 amah radius, so you're going to get those 4 are going to be outside, so 49 minus 4 is the 45. You'll have 45 vines in here. If you plant it 5 by 5, we'll get to it in a second, right? I'll skip through this, but there's also going to be 45. We'll see how we get there in a second, right? So that's what we say. If you put 4 amot or 5 amot, you can get 45 vines that are asur. Now, let's say you plant it with 6 amot in between each one, and you plant it right in the middle. So over here, you're going to be mekadesh 24 vines, right? But you see how it's 16 amah in each direction. And if you plant it 7 by 7, you're only going to be mekadesh 21 vines. And again, you see how you drew this around. It's 16 amah in each direction. Okay, now let's go back and just go through a couple of questions that Rambam asks. Critical questions. And first he asks, okay, I see the Mishnah, you say, you break it up into 2 parts. It says if you plant it 4 or 5, right, then it's mekadesh 45 vines. But if you plant it 6 or 7, then it's mekadesh 16 amah. Why are you why are you splitting? Why are you differentiating in two different shiurim? Like you're speaking in two different measurements. One, you're mentioning how many vines are asur, and the next time you're mentioning how many amot it extends. Just tell me how many vines. It's Mekadesh 45 vines. So Rambam points out that in the case of the 6 and the 7, it's going to be Mekadesh much less. It's only going to be Mekadesh 16 amot. If you take 16 amot in each direction, it's not going to be 45 vines, right? As we saw in that last picture, it's only Mekadesh 24 or 21, depending if it's 6 or 7. So the Mishnah is not going to go ahead and say, oh, it's Mekadesh 45 if it's this, and then 24 if it's this, and 21 if it's that. It's not going to go through all those. That's just very lengthy. So it's shortened up, and it said if it's 4 or 5, it's Mekadesh 45 vines. If it's 6 or 7, it's Mekadesh 16 amah in each direction. Okay, great. If so, this really begs another question, and that is, why don't you speak an even shorter language and just say it's Mekadesh 16 amah in each direction? Don't tell me 45. Right? That's unnecessary. I don't need to know that over here it's 45, and then just tell me it's 16 amot. So Rambam over here says, and he points out that when you speak about the 4 or the 5 amot in each direction, that needs to go by the amount of vines and not by the amot. We can't just say it's 16 amot. Why? Because if you look over here in the case of the 4, that works. If you take 16 amot in each direction, you'll see how if you actually round it off, and by the way, you could also use Pythagorean theorem over here. I'm not going to go through each one, but you can measure how far each one, if you take a right, if you actually take the, actually you need sine and cosine over here to actually figure out all the distances. No, you don't. You can use Pythagorean theorem also over here to figure out the hypotenuse. Right, you're going to figure out the actual hypotenuse of each one, and you'll see how which ones fall into the 16 amah radius and which ones don't. Right, so if you see the ones in the marked red, it's actually 16.97 amot from the middle, from the center. So those are going to be outside. So this makes sense how there's 45 vines that are Mekadesh in here. But if you go to the 5 and you look at it, if you're going to draw a circle of 16 amot from the middle, you're going to see that it's not just the 4 corners that are missing. There's actually 3 in each corner that are outside of the circle. So if you look over here, it's not going to be 40, it's not going to be 45. It's actually going to be 37. Now the Mishnah doesn't say 37. If you're going to use the measurement of only 16 amah, it's only going to include 37, and that should be the right number. But the Mishnah doesn't say that. Why? Because the Mishnah speaks of the case when it's 5 amot apart. If you're going to take 5 amot apart, once you get to the outside, it's going to be only 1 amah. If you look at back to this circle, 1 amah from the circle, from the, if you look at it, there's 1 amah that extends to reach the tip of the circumference, right? So if you take the 7 up, 7 down, so if you take the top one, right? So it's the 4th one from the center, you take it, if you draw that circle around, there's going to be 1 amah until that circumference. Now, when does the next vine appear? The next vine appears 4 amot away from that. So it's within reach. It's within avodat hakerem. It's within reach of the circumference. So we're going to say we're going to extend this circle, not 16 amot. We're going to extend the circle to 20 amot, right? Because the next vine is within 4 amot of the circle. We're going to extend it, and once you extend it, now it's going to include how much? It's going to include 20, it's going to include 45 vines, right? So if you use the 4 amot or the 5 amot, it's going to be a different size radius. But in both those instances, it's going to be Mekadesh 45 vines. So when it's 4 amot, it'll be Mekadesh 45 vines using a 16 amah radius. And when it's 5 amot distance, then it's going to also be Mekadesh 45 vines, but over here it's going to be a 20 amah radius because we're going to extend an extra 4 amot to reach. So that's why the Mishnah couldn't write for everything, oh, it's 16 amot in each direction, because it doesn't work. When you have a vineyard planted on a 5 amah scale, it's going to be 20 amot radius. So the Mishnah broke it up into 2 halves, 4 and 5 amot Mekadesh 45 vines. 6 and 7 amot are mekadesh. Is 16 amot in each direction or radius. Okay. Now I have another question. If we're extending over here, right, in this 5 amma case, 5 amma vineyard, we're extending to reach the next one. Why not, right, when it's planted 6 amot on 6 amot? If it's planted 6 amot on 6 amot, then if I planted something right in the middle, why don't I also extend in this scenario? Look, it's 1 amma away from the end, right? You're planting 6 amot, so if you count up, it's, it goes 3 up. It's 1 amma from the end. Let me extend it to the next one. Rambam points out over here that if you're extending to the next one, how far is the next one away? It's another 5 amot away to reach the one that's, it's 6 amot from the next one. The circumference only reaches 1 amma away. So it's another 5 until the next vine. 5 amot is too far. That's not within reach. That's more than avodat kerem, right? That's more than the 4 amot that's needed to work the vineyard. So we're not going to extend that far. And that's why in this case of the 6 amma, we're not going to extend. Similarly, in the 7 amma case, the furthest extension past the last one is going to be 2 amot, right? Because you're planting it, 7 amot apart. So 7 is 14. Another 2 is until you reach the circumference, right? That's going to reach a 16 amma radius. Now, how far is it until the next one? It's another 5 amot. Again, that's too far, right? That's extending too far. So that's why we don't extend in the case of the 6 and the 7. And that really answers everything that Harabam is speaking about. Harabam does not get into the actual measurements of how far each point is. If you look through the slides, I actually went through each one and I, just dotted each one of what's the hypotenuse if you're going to draw a right triangle to actually reach each point on a circle. Harabam, doesn't actually go through all over here, so I'm not going to mention it. If you want to go through the slides again, you'll see how it actually fits precisely with what Harabam is saying. I think this is a fascinating perush. So much is said. Highly suggest going back and reading through it. And yeah, so as we said, 16 amma in each direction, 45 gifanim, 40. It's a mekadesh 45 vines. When it comes to if it's planted on a 4 and a 5 amma scale, and it's mekadesh 16 amma in each direction if it's planted on a 7 or 8 or 6 or 7 amma scale.